Before that, Dr. Macha, I would just like to tell every participant, do not start putting your questions right now. Please drop them at the nearing the end of his talk so that all questions can be covered. Those questions who are asked right now, they get missed in the barrage of questions in the messages. So please drop them at the end of the session. Okay, Dr. Manish, over to you.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. At the outset, let me thank Dr. Nandita Madam, President IMOX, Dr. Vaidehi Madam, President NOGS, and Dr. Rajasi, General Secretary NOGS, for inviting me here. This talk I have made a little bit differently, and we are not going to discuss the routine things that we always discuss in medical legal. So I pray to Lord Ganesha to sail me through this presentation, and we will sort of see that all topics are covered, and I am here to solve all your queries. So sit back, relax. Also, there would be some slides where I will tell you to click the slide, so please take a photograph of that slide. And even if you do not or are unable to do it at that point in time, this video recording will be with NOGS, so you can do it later. After putting my prayers to Lord Ganesha, these are my alma mater, Vijay Medical College and ILS Law College. And as I was telling before we started the webinar, whatever success, whatever we are today is only because of the blood, sweat and tears which our teachers have put into us. This is me. Right. So medical legal secrets unraveled is something which we are going to discuss today. Those of you who are interested in reading novels would know a novel called Atlas Shrugged. And the common sentence there was, who is John Galt? So what are these medical legal secrets that needs to be unraveled is something which we are going to discuss today. So what do we discuss when it comes to medical legal talks, seminars or conferences? There would be people who come and discuss about law, civil, consumer. People discuss about consent, when, who to take, how to take, about documentation, notes and charts, about mishap management, how to manage death, stillbirth, about indemnity insurance, which to take, how much to take, and everything ends on doctor-patient communication, saying that if you do this properly, then you can prevent litigation. Dear friends, none of this is what we are going to discuss today. And if only time permits, 2 or 3 slides from this slide we'll discuss. What we are going to discuss today is this. How do we manage the police? When can we be arrested? What are the provisions of bail and anticipatory bail? How do you manage a mob? How do you manage media? Suppose there is a litigation, when to fight, when to settle. If you want to settle a suit or a litigation, how to settle it? Suppose you choose to fight a litigation, then how to fight it? We are also going to discuss medical legal issues arising in COVID-19 area, including some part of telemedicine. And lastly, because a lot of you, including President Dr. Vaidehi Madam and Dr. Anuradha, requested, we are going to look about medical legal issues related to tubectomy. So this is the whole gamut today. It is something which you will realize looking at the topics is not discussed during routine medical legal CMEs and seminars. Managing the police. Now, this is one of the most important thing that all of us have to know. Not depending on lawyers, not depending on medical legal consultants all the time, but we have to understand. Police are the people who will follow these 2 or 3, sort of statutes. So they will follow something called as the Indian Penal Code, where all the crimes are mentioned and their punishments are mentioned. Police will follow the Criminal Procedure Code, where it is very clearly given how to investigate, what is the trial, how the trials are, and classification of offenses. And there are offenses in other acts like MTP, PCP, NDT, POXO, and so forth. How do this police machinery get activated? They get activated when they receive a complaint against a doctor, or if a patient has complained to the police and the police are not paying any heed, the patient may put a private complaint to a magistrate who can then ask the police to investigate. Police is either called by the relatives or doctor in case of death or a mob, and in case of MLCs like road traffic accident, sexual assault, police is activated. When should we inform police? Now, this is one slide I want you to click the photograph of, because in these situations, if you do not call police, there are a lot of problems that you can ensue. If the cause of a death in a hospital is not known, please do not give a death certificate, call the police, do an MLC, hand over the body. If the death is linked to an abortion or an MTP, if the death is on the operation table or post-op 24 hours, If death is related to a medical procedure, if death is related to accidents or violence, all deaths related to tubal sterilizations where PM becomes mandatory, and when you feel that there could be an allegation of medical mismanagement, you have to inform the police. Mob violence suspected, obviously we will discuss in mob violence, you have to inform the police. Now what happens once you or the patient's relative inform the police? What procedure the police should follow? So for example, if somebody has complained against a doctor to the police station, what the police are supposed to do? Who has decided this? The Supreme Court has decided this. Again, click a photograph of this, because whenever you go to a police station, lot of the police constables or junior PSIs and all, they do not know this. So you need to know something known as the Jacob Matthews versus State of Punjab decision, because hearing the judges have put forth how the police should investigate a criminal complaint against a doctor. So they said that ideally the government of India or state government should have guidelines. Now the guidelines do not exist. Then what the police are supposed to do? The police are supposed to do three things. One, a private complaint may not be entertained unless there is a credible opinion given by another competent doctor. Meaning whereby if a patient goes to a police to complain against a doctor, there he should have a credible opinion given by another doctor saying that there was or appears to be negligence in the case, then the police will take the complaint. Point number two, the investigating officer has to obtain an independent and competent medical opinion from a government medical college or civil surgeon, and they have to apply what is called as the Boehm's test. So we will discuss the Boehm's test. So what the police have to do: A, take another doctor's opinion with the complaint. If that is not there, then take the opinion of the local medical college or civil surgeon wherein they apply Boehm's test. Point number three, if that opinion comes to be gross negligence, even then the arrest of the doctor is not needed. Only if the police feel that the doctor may run away or tamper with evidence with reasons, the arrest may be there. So even if expert opinion is of prima facie negligence, arrest only if necessary. What is Boehm's test? So Boehm's test is a test of reasonability. It is the skill of an ordinary person and ordinary competent man. So for example, if a gynecologist is having or an obstetrician is having postpartum hemorrhage and he is not trained in doing internal iliac ligation, no problem. He can do an obstetric hysterectomy, he or she can do an obstetric hysterectomy to save the life of the patient. In that case, Boehm's test is positive, there is no negligence, and he can be absolved of all liability. So ordinary skill is what is expected. Now my point of discussion is, what has the Supreme Court told the police? That you either take with the complaint another doctor's opinion, you take the opinion of the civil surgeon or the government medical college when they apply Boehm's test, and even if the expert opinion comes as gross negligence, arrest is not necessary. So the issue is, if there is complaint against a doctor, the police will make a diary note, they will collect the documents, they will take deposition from doctor and staff, and they will send the documents to the civil surgeon or government medical college, who would constitute a committee. If that committee says there is gross negligence, then there is a FIR registered. If the committee says there is no negligence or not a gross negligence, then police will file a closure report. And arrest, if what kind of section is applied from the IPC, whether it is bailable or non-bailable, depends on that. We will discuss a little later. MTP, PCP, PCB, POCSO, all these acts are dangerous because they are non-bailable offences in the act. And these are all the different sections that the police may apply against a doctor. So just know that there are different sections. And if you see the number of the section written, 299, 311, 312, all that number is more than 165. Please note one number, 165. I will get back to you in 2 or 3 slides. Another point is, can a doctor be charged for culpable homicide or murder? The reason is, the answer is no, because whatever we do, the intention of doing that thing is always right. So a crime is an act plus guilty mind. If you have the knowledge that whatever you do can kill and the intention to kill, then it becomes murder. If you have the knowledge and no intention, it's 304. And this is what the Supreme Court wants the police to apply in case of death against a doctor, rash and negligent act. It is a cognizable offense. So you are arrested, but you get bail in the police station, meaning whereby you never go to jail. So the doctor never goes to jail. Then my question is, if the police follow the proper procedure of Supreme Court and register a crime only if there is gross negligence report given by the committee and apply section 304A as per Supreme Court's advice, and the doctor gets bail, then why are so many doctors getting arrested? What happens? Why are the doctors getting arrested if all the law, all the Supreme Court guidelines, all the Supreme Court procedures are pro doctors and not against them? The reasons lie here. The reasons are, it is difficult for the police to interpret different sections. So for example, here we had a patient dying of Voveron injection, which causes anaphylaxis. Now, Voveron injection causing anaphylaxis, the police interpreted as the doctor had knowledge that any injection can cause anaphylaxis, still that injection was given. And because the knowledge was there, so section 304 was applied. And the doctor, her husband, 3 sisters, everybody was put behind bars. We were fortunate that IMA was activated here and we could go and meet the commissioner and take them out. But interpretation of sections of IPC by police is the problem. So as a society, through FOXI, through local societies, what we need to do is see that they interpret the sections properly. Lack of knowledge of medical guidelines. Now, incidentally, why I told you to click a photograph of Jacob Matthews is, the police manual does not even mention Jacob Matthews. So we have a big problem. The police officers who are coming out, they may come out with, guidelines and different judgments which are not there in their curriculum. POXO Act, so many of the police will not know about POXO Act. So that becomes a problem. Again, it is for us to educate them. Lack of knowledge of newer acts like POXO and Criminal Law Amendment Act. There is definitely political pressure from patient side to arrest the doctor, to harass the doctor. And friends, the last sentence is most important. Whatever we have to do before an FIR is registered. Because once an FIR is registered at police station and arrest made, then things become very difficult. So many times the doctor faces the music alone. And in order to get the FIR, which is already registered, quashed, you have to go under section 482 CRPC to High Court. So whatever we have to do, we have to act very fast before the FIR is registered. Now, this is very common scenario, and next 2 slides are extremely important. How do the police work? What they do is, they will give you a phone call, or a constable in uniform will come when your entire OPD is full, and they will be very polite to you. So they will say, come to police station, we have received a complaint. We need your help in that matter. Please come to police station. Sometimes you receive a notice, you call the police, they say, no, it's just a notice, you please come to the police station. If you see the notices sent to doctors, they are sent either to appear at XYZ date and time at 11 AM or 3 PM. The doctor appears at police station, he is told there that so-and-so offense is registered against him, and the doctor is arrested. This is what happens in 99% of the cases. Now, how to prevent this? Again, this is one of the most important slides. You want to click a photograph, click. Never allow phone calls. Ask the police to give you a notice of appearance in writing. Now we will discuss that notice. And as I told you, remember the number 166, 166. Never go to the police station alone or with wife. Because the problem is, once any person is arrested, a nearby person is informed of the arrest. So the problem is, if the doctor husband and doctor wife go to a police station, the wife is told that your husband is getting arrested and that person is arrested. So the legal requirements of arrest is satisfied. That is why don't go with wife. I mean wife meaning by any other person. Don't go, just 2 of them, don't go to the police station. Third point, never go when they have called. Adjust your timings. See when you are comfortable. Go around, try and find out why exactly have you been called. And if you get a revised date, get that date in writing. Because if the case goes to court, the police will say that you were summoned to the police station twice or thrice and you did not appear. So tell the police to give another notice for another date and time. They will give you, no problem, because you are a professional, because you are a doctor, you are treating patients, you are treating emergencies. It is well within your right to take the revised date in writing. Never go at 3 PM and never on a Friday. You go at 3 PM and you are arrested. till next day 11 a.m. your bail application the court will not accept. Please note this, that anticipatory bail is a different thing. I am talking about bail which is granted after arrest. Never go at 3 p.m. Always go at 11 a.m. So even if you are arrested, your bail application can be discussed at 3 p.m. No court in India will sit after 5 p.m. And if you are arrested at 3 p.m., by the time they finish the procedure of arrest, it is already 5 p.m. Never go on a Friday. Although Sessions Court, High Court, they are supposed to run on Saturdays, Sundays. Although the judges are supposed to hear the bail application even from clubs or their homes, it is only in textbooks. Practically, it is not done. So never go on a Friday. Always go on Monday fresh, 11 a.m. in the morning. Exploit all your contacts and resources before you go, especially before FIR is registered. So whatever you have to talk to, whether they are politicians, senior police officers, commissioner, president of your society, ethics, now I will add ethics medical legal committee, FOXI chairpersons, members, FOXI secretary general, do that before an FIR is registered. Friends, once an FIR is registered, the only way to quash it is go under section 482 CRPC to High Court. And it becomes very difficult because the High Court will say, why do you want the FIR to be quashed? If you are innocent, let the investigation happen. And that is what happens in more than 90% of the cases. Read the notice carefully. Take help of a medical legal consultant. What is written in the notice, very important. Again, I am reminding you of one figure, one number, 166. Now, these are the different sections under which a notice will be sent to you. If a notice is sent under section 91, it will be written under section 91 CRPC, which means that the police want either you to attend and produce the papers or only produce the papers. If it reads produce the papers, you can send a hospital, mama, maushi, sister, anyone. If attend and produce, you have to go yourself. Always give the Xerox copy to police. Always number the papers. Take proper acknowledgement, and according to Medical Council of India Act, once you receive the notice, the day you sign the notice, you have 72 hours to prepare and submit the paper. So don't be in a rush. Wait. Let an MLC, medical legal consultant, or a lawyer or a senior doctor see the papers first and then submit. Because once you submit the papers, it is Marathit Sutlela Band, it cannot be retrieved. And this 72 hours comes from this. So take a photograph of this. Police will not know this. Police will want the papers then and there. If there is a death, when you are sending doing an MLC and sending the body for post-mortem by the police, they would want the papers then and there. So this is something you show them. Tell them that this is according to our Act, MCI Professional Conduct, Etiquettes and Ethics Regulations 2002. We are supposed to store the papers for 3 years from the date of commencement. And if any request is made for medical records, either by the patients or authorized attendant or legal authorities involved, the same may be duly acknowledged and document shall be issued within a period of 72 hours. So you have 3 days to submit the papers. Now, second is, so that is section 91. Again, remember 166, I'm going to come back. Appearance to the police. So a police may want you to come to the police station for enquiry. Now that enquiry, the police will send you a notice under section 160. So 91 was for papers, 160 is for appearance. Now there are certain categories where if you receive this kind of notice, you can refuse to go to the police station and ask the police to come to your residence. Who are they? A male person less than 15 or more than 65. So if you are a doctor who's more than 65 years and you receive a notice under section 160 from police, you call them and say, I'm more than 65. You come to my residence and ask. This police don't know. So you have to tell them. A woman, if you are a lady doctor and if there is no lady constable present, you can refuse going to the police station. You come to my house, you come to my residence at so and so time, and I will answer everything. A mentally or physically disabled person. So if you have difficulty in walking, you have had surgery of spine, you have had surgery of leg, if there's a problem, you can, very well deny. If you finally go to the police station, they are supposed to give you expenses of travel. I know, exorbitant statement I am making ki polisanकडनं पैसे घ्यायचे, but this is what the act says. That if you are going there, you can take my रिक्षाचं भाडं 100 रुपये झालंय ते तुमच्याकडनं घेणार. Because you are entitled according to section 160. So 91 was for papers, 160 is for appearance, 161 is for examination. So the police will ask you questions and they may write them down. 162, whatever they write down, you may not sign it. Okay, you can refuse giving your signature. This is also very much well within your rights to do so. 165 is for police to search your hospital. So if there is a drug complaint regarding misoprostol or medical abortion or some abortion complication, they will come and search your hospital. They may have a warrant to search under 166, and section 100 will give them what is the procedure of searching. Some other time we will discuss while discussing PCP NDT how they actually search the procedure. Again, 166, remember, on the notice, you will either have 91 for documents, 160 for appearance, 161 for witness examination, 162 you need not sign, 165 search, 166 warrant. If on the notice, now please note what I am telling you, if on the notice there is a number written or a section written other than sections, you will disappear from your clinic and not go to police station. Now please get this completely inside. If any other number is written more than 166, everything is dangerous. I showed you the sections from Indian Penal Code 277, 300, 304, 302. All those are dangerous. Any section more than 166 is dangerous. If any other number is written, contact your medical legal consultant, your lawyer, Foxy Ethics Medical Legal Committee. Me personally, do not go to police station, come what may. Even if you have to disappear, you disappear. Because if any other number is written and you go to police station and you're arrested, there is a big problem to take you out. So 166, everybody will remember. Any number other than 91, 160, 161, 162. So 166 is the one. Any number greater than that you see on the notice, don't go to the police station. Again, for the sake of our understanding, I repeat this slide. How to avoid getting arrested. Never allow phone calls. Ask for notice. Never go to police station alone or with wife. Never go when they have called. You go when you are comfortable. Revised date to be taken in writing. Never go at 3 p.m. Never go on a Friday. Whatever you have to do, do before the FIR is registered. Read the notice carefully. 166. Any number more than 166. Any other number written on the notice, you will not go to the police station. Now, what happens if you are arrested? Now, arrest can be there. There are two types. It depends on offenses. There are some offenses where the punishment is more than 2 years. They are supposed to be grave offenses where an arrest can be done without warrant. So the police inspector in charge or the police in charge does not need the magistrate to give him a permission to arrest. That is arrest without warrant. Section 304A, all offenses under MTP Act or POXO Act or PCP NDT Act are cognizable offenses. So there, the arrest can be made without warrant. Then there are some non-cognizable offenses where the arrest will be made only with warrant. So there, the police will have to take the permission of the magistrate. In which, whatever ways, if arrest is made, you have to understand under what section that arrest is made. If the whatever charge or offense or the section is bailable, you get bail as a right. For example, section 304A in case of death. So you get the bail in police station. You actually never go behind bars and you go home. If it is a non-bailable offense, for example, MTP, PCP, NDT, POXO, 304 section and some other sections of IPC, then you have two options. Before arrest, you can apply for anticipatory bail, which can be done in Sessions Court or High Court, or after arrest, you can contest the bail to the magistrate, whichever is there for hearing the bail application. But anticipatory bail only in Sessions Court and High Court, and appeal lies to the Supreme Court. Now, one thing I'll tell you from experience, especially from MTP point of view, we all take MTP very lightly, but trust me, to get somebody anticipatory bail because there is an offense established under MTP Act is very difficult. Mostly the Sessions Court judges are females and they are very sensitive to topics of MTP, tubectomy, abortions and so on and so forth, and they do not give anticipatory bail. So please be very aware of your MTP and follow of that act also. PCP NDT I understand, but even MTP is, you have to be very careful about it. So what are we afraid of? We are afraid of an offense where it is written that it is cognizable and non-bailable. CNB is what we should be afraid of. Cognizable, non-bailable. You have a notice in your hand, you have anything written other than 166 and above, you put that on Google, even if nobody is around, and write classification of offense. If it is written cognizable, non-bailable, just disappear from that place. Go to an unknown place, contact your lawyer, contact your MLC, and let that person do whatever is to be done. Cognizable, non-bailable, CNB, is most dangerous, please remember. So that is how you can manage police. I will definitely take questions at the end. Some things are still remaining to discuss. How do you manage a mob? Now, how do you manage a cardiac arrest in a hospital, or how do you manage an anaphylaxis? We do drills for that. We do drills for cardiac arrest. We do drills for anaphylaxis, code blue, so on and so forth. We have to do drills for mob management also. At nth hour, it is very difficult to, everything is haywire and you do not know what is happening. So amongst that drills, 3 things very important, I'll tell you. Thing number 1, whom to summon. Konala bolvayche. Point number 2, is there an escape for you? So there should be a door through which you can escape. And point number 3, very important, is what staff should remain and what staff should not remain. So staff which are weak-minded, staff which are, you can always see in your staff category people who are weak-minded, people who are strong-minded. Strong-minded people should stay, weak-minded people should go. And so there has to be a mock drill to this. Call police. If you fear that there is a mob issue, you should call police. Now problem is, so many times the police will say ki 5-10 lok jatil the, why should we come? Why should we leave our job and come? Now to absolve this problem, dial 100, because whatever calls you make on 100 are recorded calls. Yes. And the police inspector in charge has to give, once the call is received, what happened after 1 minute, what happened after 5 minutes, till the time they go to the place, make a report and come back, the report is in minutes. So dial 100, and a small suggestion, let a female call. That female could be your junior staff, a sister, anybody. And if that female calls and says there are 10 people around in the hospital and they are threatening me, and if she cries, trust me, the police will come in next 5 minutes. If they hear my voice, they may take half an hour to come. They may take 10 calls, but if they hear Vaidehi madam's voice, they will come in 5 minutes. So that is some thing which, chivalry is left in the police, at least for females, that much we can make use of. Role of bouncers, yes, you can have bouncers, but vicarious liability of action of bouncers is on you. What is vicarious liability? We'll discuss a little later. That whatever the bouncers do, complete responsibility of their actions is not on them, but you also. So for example, if the bouncers are beating somebody and that person dies, then you have a little problem. So it is not very easy that way to manage them. So bouncers also, to just keep those people away, they may not retaliate. Another very important point from mob management point of view is something which we never discuss, and which I always tell others is, in Indian Penal Code, the law gives you permission to beat somebody who's either beating you or destroying your property. All I see is, video calls and videos on WhatsApp and so on and so forth, where 2-3 people who are beating a hell and hearty doctor. Why is he not beating back? I don't know. Section 96 to 106, even section 100, they give you full authority to hit back. You can hit back. Now, again here, I always say off the dais, some few suggestions are, when these things are happening, few of your sisters or female staff should come forward. Because if 3 people hit one doctor for half an hour, 2-3 people may interfere. But if one person touches one female staff, 10 people will interfere. That how dare you touch a female? So again, there a small change, if you have some females there, it will definitely help. But you can hit back. Section 100 of IPC even says that in retaliation or for protection of person or property, even if you kill a person, it is still not an offense. Only thing is, the burden of proof is on you, that that person was beating you so severely or destroying your property that you could have died. So again, these are the sections which protect us. CCTV is a must. CCTV with audio video recording is a must. That plays a very important role. Exploit your contacts. Now, what I have observed in mob management is, suppose the mob beats up a doctor or the mob vandalizes a hospital, out of 100, not even 10 doctors complain to the police because they fear the mob will come back again. Now the problem is because we don't complain, the police do nothing, and the mob goes and vandalizes another hospital. So exploit your contacts, politicos, police, and definitely complain. Go with the CCTV cameras. We have, from myself, what I do is, if I am complaining on behalf of a doctor, I take the complaint on that on the letterhead of the doctor. I attach one act to it. I attach relevant sections of IPC, and we take this and take acknowledgement to the police station and get back. If in 24 hours nothing is happening, we go to the higher authority. And what act copy we attach is this: Maharashtra Medicare Service Persons and Institutions Prohibition and Prevention of Violence Act. This act is only 8 or 9 sections, very small act, Xerox copy of that attached, because police don't know about this act. So if you only complain about mob beating and vandalizing, the police will apply sections of IPC which are bailable. So nobody is arrested, they go home, everything is happy. But here, what did I tell you? C and B, cognizable and non-bailable. So offenses here are cognizable and non-bailable. That means the mob people who have done all the ruckus will be arrested without warrant. That's point number 1. And point number 2, they will not get bail as a right. So you have to complain. Imprisonment for 3 years, 50,000 rupees fine, and compensation twice the amount of damage caused. So 2 things. 1, you can retaliate, CCTV, take the footage, take the act, write down your complaint and give it to the police station. Wait for 24 hours. If in 24 hours the culprits are not arrested, then you can go to the senior authorities. How to manage media? That is another problem. You have anything, the media, because of TRP, media understands that doctors are soft targets. Mouth to mouth publicity, we are very much bothered. We think, what will happen to my practice? What will happen if somebody knows that there was a death or a stillbirth or something has gone wrong? But friends, for a number of years, we've been working so hard, our family life will be deprived. There are few black sheep, I understand, and they do it for TRP rating. Now, there was this media person who had come to a police station where I had gone for some other work, and that police inspector in front of that media person was telling me, he was telling in Marathi, but I tell you in English. He was telling me, doctor, your branch is very good because you do sonography, and if there is a female you abort, you get money for sonography also, and you get money for abortion also. Now that PI is telling me in front of that media person. So I said, see sir, if you take 1,000 obstetricians, not only maybe less than even 1% would be doing it, 999 would not do it. On the contrary, if you take 1,000 PIs, 9,999 will take bribe. Now both of them started laughing. Then he's telling me, I cannot argue with you. So I said, sir, you started it. I never started. So, the media is there to pick up such things and then they'll quote you and put. Now, how to manage media? Very important. Most important is, first is point number 3. If a matter is sub judice, means if a matter is under investigation or trial, you can always say that I will not give my reaction. But the problem is, if you do not give your reaction or somebody on your behalf does not give your reaction, media trials happen and lot of judges and lot of courts are actually affecting their judgments because of this media trial. So I'm not of the opinion that you should not speak. I am of the opinion that you should speak. Now, if you have to speak, how do you speak is like this. Never face them alone. You face them as a group or you face them as a society. So the senior members, senior doctors, or your local society or Indian Medical Association will always have a spokesperson. If you do not have, I think every society should have a spokesperson who should have all cordial relations with the media. That person, along with senior doctors, past presidents should go and sit and have a proper conference with all written proof, whatever is going to be there. Exploit all your contacts. So there would be so many, Patrakar and so many people, journalists who are your patients, so on and so forth. Exploit them. Media trials are short-lived. So whatever you say, whatever is being discussed at that point in time will definitely affect what is going to happen in the courts, etc. Always, whenever you are sitting in the media wants to hear one thing. We will fully cooperate with the authorities for all investigations. Point number 1, and we empathize with the patient. In front of media, never say, I had called the patient 3 times, she came only once. I had told the patient to take medicines, she never took. That patient lives so far. She came once after 9:30 when I had to come back from home. Never do that. Empathize with patient. Say that we are with the patient. We also want to find out what went wrong. We have done everything in our capacity for the patient. We will fully cooperate with all the authorities for any kind of investigation or trial. And you have to be prepared beforehand, because the media wants you to lose your cool and to say something which can be used against you. Most importantly, take documentary evidence when you go to the media. So for example, you have followed a particular protocol of management. That protocol is given by Government of India or Foxy or any society. Put that protocol in front of the media saying, please show this. This is what we have done, right? So this is how, these are some of the points which will help you to manage media. So I am not of the opinion that don't talk to media, talk to media. We have burnt our fingers by not talking to media in cases, and the media trial affected anticipatory bail and other proceedings in court. All right. So the next question is when to fight and when to settle. So you have a litigation suit. Should you fight? Should you settle? What is to be done and what decides all this? When to settle is the first question. So a lot of us will tell you don't settle, keep on fighting. See, time, energy, effort, money is something which is very important, and most importantly is your peace of mind. So what makes you settle? What makes you fight? I will give you a little insight so that every doctor should think whether I should fight this or settle. You should always settle if it is res ipsa loquitur. We'll go to what res ipsa loquitur is. These are some kind of problems or some kind of things which happen, and they do not have very good defense, or sometimes they do not have any defense. Now there you need to settle. How is your endurance and grit? Because if you are an emotional person, if you are a person who's family dependent, family driven, it is very difficult for you to go, because it's a prolonged process. In India, judicial activism, judicial process is a prolonged process. Nothing comes fast. You think delivering a primary takes time? Friends, going through a litigation takes like delivering 10,000 primaries, one after another. So, it is not easy to face all that. Plus, there are monetary considerations. Your insurance, whether your insurance is going to pay all that. Insurance will not pay the lawyer of your choice. Insurance will not pay out of court settlement. Insurance will not pay so many things. And do you have so much of money to spend? Trust me, these cases and fighting sometimes is very costly, even costlier than the compensation. So for example, I have heard or I have met few people who were asked a compensation of 2 lakhs, and then they went on fighting, and at the end they won the case, and considering that after winning, when they took out how much they had spent was around 5.5 to 6 lakhs. So that's where 2 lakh dile aste tar, all the turmoil, all thing would have been avoided. Next point is you have to also know who the opposite party is. No, very important. Who is the opposite party? Who's the opposite lawyer? How good are they? Very important is there a precedence? Now, precedence is something which is very important. For example, there was a patient posted for total abdominal hysterectomy, nothing to do with laparoscopy, open hysterectomy, where there was extensive endometriosis. Now, the doctor who operated, her real brother is a urologist. Is a MCH urologist. So her real brother came and assisted her. Even after that, the patient developed vesicovaginal fistula. Now, all consents, everything in place that vesicovaginal fistula can occur, because of, this is a very high risk case, which is endometriosis for total abdominal hysterectomy. The compensation asked was 5 lakhs. So they went to the district forum here. The patient won the case. Now this doctor was discussing whether I should pursue this in appeal or not. So a lot of people said give 5 lakhs. Now friends, the problem is that if she gave 5 lakhs of rupees and did not pursue an appeal, this will become a precedence that in case of endometriosis, if you have vesicovaginal fistula, it is negligence. Then who will touch endometriosis cases? And we all are doing grade 4 endometriosis laparoscopy day in and out. So I told that doctor, we will fight this in High Court. We will fight this in State Commission. And so we put an appeal to State Commission, and we eventually won that case. And then nobody went to the National Commission. So precedence is most important. Are you creating a precedence? That's point number 1. Point number 2, do you have a precedence? So if there is a precedence which says that road traffic accident, the incidence of infection should not be more than that, because we are following one case, so I know this. The incidence of infection should not be more than 13%, and the incidence of methicillin resistant staph aureus should not be more than 3. and a young patient without a problem has MRSA and loses a limb, and you have this kind of precedence, earlier judgment, it is very difficult to fight. That in that case, it is very easy to, okay, now you settle it, because you cannot fight that people will show the precedence. See, the basic difference between a medical practice, I mean, I'm just joking, but this is the truth. The basic difference between a medicine practice between two consultants and judging a case between two judges. If I say the diagnosis is endometriosis, another consultant will say, no, the diagnosis is not endometriosis, but PID, right? If one judge has given a judgment for a particular facts in one way, the second judge will 100% follow it with a precedence. That judge will not question. He will say, okay, same facts, precedence accepted and rejected. So precedence is very important in law. So whenever we have a case, whenever somebody wants to fight or settle, I always ask, is there a precedence? पूर्वी same गोष्टीसाठी, same thingसाठी अशी case झाली का? And what is the judgment, final judgment of that case? If exactly for the same facts we have had an adverse judgment, don't fight. It is good to settle. Defense and medical legal concern. What exactly is the defense? How to put up a defense? You know, that also becomes very important. Medical legal consultant, maybe a little bit discussed. Now, this is one very landmark case, and I've put this case here for a particular reason, because I want to discuss what res ipsa loquitur is. So what happened in this case? A patient died of a road traffic accident, and when they burned the patient, third day they went to collect his ashes, and they found a pair of artery forceps. They were not scissors, they were a pair of artery forceps which they found there. So they complained, and they said that this is a foreign body which was left inside when the patient was being operated. Now the surgeon argued, the advocate of the surgeon argued that for a lot of times to control bleeding, we do use artery forceps or sponges, and that artery forceps has not killed the patient. The patient died of multiple injuries, hemorrhage, shock. But the judgment came as adverse. They gave it's not 1.20 lakhs, it's 12 lakhs. So they awarded compensation, saying that if you have left something inside, that is res ipsa loquitur, or the thing speaks for itself. Now click this slide. Take a photograph, because for these things we do not have a defense. So if you have done surgery without consent, you have done surgery on a wrong patient or a wrong organ, if you have left a mop or instrument inside, which is termed as gossi pyeboma, if you have transfused wrong blood, or if you have performed a criminal abortion, meaning whereby you have done a MTP at a place which is unrecognized for MTP, you know, or more than 12 weeks without the court's permission, so on and so forth. So all these comes under res ipsa loquitur. So if this happens, then it is better to settle and not fight. How to settle is the next question. So there was a doctor in Pune, very much our POGS member, who had left a mop inside during cesarean section. The patient came back twice to her, and some juniors did examine. They did an ultrasound, nothing happened. They were giving her painkillers. And finally, the pain was so much that she actually went to Nagpur. And there one surgeon operated on her, and that surgeon removed a mop, and the entire surgery was filmed by one of her relatives. Now, that is a different problem. But then in such cases, you cannot go to the court. And in such cases, you need to settle. So how to settle? It depends on what stage the litigation is. The patient can approach you, or the patient's advocate can approach you before the suit actually or litigation actually starts. If there is a police or magistrate complaint, or if there's a civil case or consumer case. So at every stage, how can you settle if you want to settle is what we'll discuss. So if the case is not yet registered, it's not there in any court, it is just an advocate or patient's notice stage, what you can do is you have to make an agreement of settlement. Very important is, in that agreement, do not accept negligence. So no line should say that we are sorry, we hereby say that our treatment was wrong, we accept that there was negligence on our part. असं काहीही लिहून द्यायचं नाही. So there is a very standard format of such agreements. Now this is an agreement made out of court, so it is a dangerous thing to do. So I'll tell you in next slide what exactly better way to do. Get the agreement notarized. There should be 2 witnesses. Include all causes of action. Now important is, any agreement in derogation of law is void. More importantly, it cannot include criminal complaints. So in one line, if you do out of court settlement like this, the patient can still go and complain to the police. So no out of court settlement or no settlement will absolve your liability from criminal action. So आपण किती पैसे दिले तरी police complaint ही आयुष्यभर कधीही होऊ शकते. There is no limitation act working for criminal complaint. So that sword of Damocles, that राजासारखी ती sword is hanging on our head always. Criminal law can be set into motion in spite of out of court settlement. So please remember this. Your out of court settlement, whenever you are settling, is only for a civil case or a consumer case. It can never be for a criminal case. Now, what happens if it is at litigation stage? Can you, so there is case already in the court. Can you do that? Yes. So you can do for civil and criminal matters both. And civil or court settlement, and out of court settlement can either be done in the court. So this is out of court settlement being done in the court, where both the advocates give their part of agreement. That agreement is converted into a consent decree, and that decree is given by court. Money is to be submitted to the court, and the court gives the money to the patient. So this is out of court settlement being done in the court. This is more safe. It is better than just doing an agreement on a Sunday, sitting in a 5-star hotel. That is not very good option. This is good option. Another option which is very good. Now in criminal cases also you can do out of court settlement, but they're only compoundable offenses. So offenses which are of very trifle nature you can do. If there are non-compoundable offenses, you need the permission of court for out of court settlement. You can click a picture of this. So if there is a section applied on you which is 323, 341, 52, 55 and 58, only these sections you can do out of court settlement for criminal cases. All other sections are non-compoundable. Section 304A, which is applied to us for death due to rash and negligent action, MTP, PCP and DT, POCSO, all are non-compoundable offenses. So only 323, 341, 52, 55 and 58. Only these 5 remain compoundable offenses. So another thing which the court may direct you is to go through ADRs, alternative dispute redressal systems. What are ADRs? Arbitration, conciliation. In fact, the new amendments in the Consumer Protection Act also say that if you want to go to ADR, you can go to ADR. So there is a mechanism wherein you can have these, and you can do out of court settlement. So what is the best way to do out of court settlement is to settle it in the court. Second best way to do out of court settlement through ADR. And not a very good way to do out of court settlement is in a hotel. So these 3 are the ones in decreasing order which will help you later. In civil matters, in consumer matters, you can do for all. Yes. In criminal matters, only for compoundable offenses, and non-compoundable offenses, you need permission of the court. Now what happens if there is out of court settlement and then the patient again puts a consumer or civil case? In that case, for fraud or coercion, you can complain to the court, or for specific performance of the compromise agreement you can put. Now that is why I said doing an out of court settlement through the court is good. Because if the court only has given a consent decree, if the court only has done out of court settlement, it will be very easy for the court to be convinced that, okay, the other party is not following. Whereas if you have done it with ADR, or if you have done it sitting in a 5-star, it will be slightly difficult for the court to understand what goes on. In the court settlement, out of court settlement agreement is made by the court only. मीच तयार केलंय तर मला समजून घेणं सोपं आहे. दुसऱ्यांनी तयार केलंय, मला समजून घेणं डिफिकल्ट आहे. Okay. Okay, so $1 million question is how much to settle for? Now, please, so people will start from 50. So for the case which I told you, the MOP remaining, we started negotiating from 50 lakhs and settled for 4 lakhs. So please understand that it always starts with a higher thing and comes back. Consider what is the damage. Is it disability or death? Consider compensation award recent times for such damages. Get a good negotiator. Don't take politicos or other people as negotiators, because they would want their share, and then it becomes very difficult. So that is how to fight a litigation suit. So now if you have decided that you are going to fight a litigation suit, how to do it? Now there are various things involved in a medical legal case. First, you have to know what the case is, whether it is consumer, civil or criminal. What are the allegations? what are the defenses? And friends, if there is one thing which decides whether we should fight and how long we should fight, is the question that how much resilient and patient are we? If you have lot of resilience, you have lot of patience, you can definitely fight. So these are all the different fora. This I think everybody knows. So I'll run through few slides. I want to complete COVID. Police, imprisonment, fine, magistrate, civil courts, consumer courts, disciplinary committee, so on. So there are different fora, and all fora can be approached simultaneously. So there can be one case in all the fora. Again, the Consumer Protection Act, this you all know, the new amendments up to 1 crore to district forum, up from 1 to 10 crore to state forum, and more than 10 crores for national forum. So this is something which I want you to remember. So whatever you do and whatever your staff does, you are vicariously responsible for that. So when you want to fight, see whether the thing of vicarious responsibility is there. So this is what happened in this case. A minor child had typhoid fever. The nurse was told to give injection Lariago. She was not a qualified nurse. She gave IV, and there was cardiac arrest, and the nurse, hospital, all were negligent. 12.5 lakhs compensation. This is where the vicarious liability comes. One more case, bone marrow aspiration test was to be done. It was conducted by PG students of pathology department without supervision or guidance of HOD. Needle pierced the right ventricle of the patient, and the patient died. Negligence held 3 lakhs awarded with 9% interest from date of complaint, principle of vicarious liability. So once you have a case, also understand whether there is vicarious liability, and you cannot go away from this vicarious liability. That decides whether you want to fight the case or not fight the case. These are some of the common allegations: deficiency in statutory compliance, negligence, procedure without consent, lack of adequate communication, departure from standard of care, loss of limb, mental agony, loss of consortium, and mixture of all ideas. So generally the complaint is copy paste. What are our defenses? These are our defenses. Technical defense is locus standi, whether the person can complain, jurisdiction of court, whether limitation is time barred. So in consumer court, after 2 years, you cannot complain. So limitation for consumer court is 2 years. It is not a sacrosanct science, general exceptions. We have followed the protocols, contributory negligence, so on and so forth. So there would be lot of defenses available to us. What is our defense also decides whether we should fight or continue. Lack of proper training is certainly not a defense. So for example, if you are, this happened here, for a PPH, why you did not do stepwise devascularization, and the answer given was, I was not trained in it. You cannot give this answers. Better, you should say, I was more trained to do obstetric hysterectomy and I did an obstetric hysterectomy. That is very well accepted. Lack of legal knowledge is also not a defense. So ignorantia juris non excusat. I did not know that this is supposed to be done this way, cannot be a defense. So now another thing which I'll put forth is, so I told you that the Bolam test needs to be applied. But recently in few judgments, the courts are not accepting the affidavits given by our societies and senior doctors, saying that doctors take sides of the doctors and they are not giving them independently. So missed on sonography, absent kidney plus limb. Defense given was oligohydramnios, and sonography is not 100% science. Obtained expert evidence in favor of doctors, 15 lakh rupees compensation awarded. Why? Because other than Bolam's test, there are some judges who are now following the Bolitho principle, which says that one can give a judgment against expert opinion and weigh the evidence. So you want to fight or not fight? How do you know? Ask your medical legal consultant or lawyer. A good lawyer or a good medical legal consultant knows the law. A best medical legal consultant and best lawyer knows the judge. If you know the judge, what the judge is going to follow, he will tell you. The judge is going to follow the Bolitho principle. So better that we do not continue. How much resilient and patient are we is completely and totally left to you. So you have to decide according to your mental frame, according to your backup, your physical mental agony, whether you want to fight or not fight. What it takes to be a doctor in school, in junior college, in medical college, in hospital, specialty training, loans, almost 24 years. I have seen a lot of doctors, when they face litigation, they go in depression. They don't come out. We have some doctors who have left practice because there was a complaint, so on and so forth. So how much resilient are we is something which is left to you. So what is the stepwise solution? If you have decided to fight, not panic, consult your medical legal consultant lawyer. You draft a reply which is proper, use all documents, protocols. Supporting statements should be supportive. with respect to guidelines from Government of India first, then FOXI, IIG, ACOG, RCOG, and Cochrane. Remember, our government guidelines rank the top. Appearance in court should always be there. Do not try to take adjournment and stretch the matter. Well, MLC versus a lawyer, we can sometimes have a debate on this. So maybe a lawyer and a medical legal consultant, who's better? Maybe we'll leave it to some other time. When you draft your answer as a doctor, so even if your lawyer is drafting, if your medical legal consultant drafting, is okay because that person understands medicine. But important is you have to see that the facts that you are giving have documentary proof. So anything that you say should be documentary, available either as guidelines or protocols. It should absolve you of any liability, and it should clearly say that you followed all standard of care. Denial of specific things should be not evasive, but point to point, and malified intention should be clearly pointed out. And this is your job when you are helping your lawyers or medical legal consultants. So work within the scope of practice, seek support, use the standard protocols, evidence-based medicine, and prepare to defend whatever you have worked for. And obviously at the same time, if you have decided to fight the litigation, you have to inform your insurance in writing with a copy of the notice or the litigation, and consider this and start preparing your case. Now, these are different types of suits, which you have, but again, the basic principles remain the same. One line, if I have to tell you, if your resilience and integrity is good, then only go in for fighting. Otherwise, don't believe your lawyers. They will say, हम 3 महीने में जीत जाएंगे. If you have seen Munna Bhai MBBS, ये तो 6 महीने में जीत जाएंगे, 2 साल में जीत जाएंगे, so on and so forth, and it never ends. Right. So then there is appeal, wherein you have hierarchy of courts. So don't get disheartened. If you have lost a case, you can always go in appeal from consumer courts, district commission to state to national to Supreme Court, and High Court and Supreme Court have special powers for. How do we learn? We learn from our judgments. There is a ratio decidendi which tells us about why the particular judgment is given, and there is obiter dicta comments by the judges on which future laws can be made. Do not budge under pressure. So now if you have decided that, okay, you are going to fight this case, do not budge under pressure. Do not try to settle. Do not pay money. So don't try to bribe the judge and all. Okay, people do that. Judge ko paise dete hai, opposite lawyer ko paise dete hai, aisa mat karo. Be prepared for a long battle. Politicians and leaders, I leave it to you. But if used at an appropriate time, they will definitely work for you. A few things about medical legal issues in COVID-19 area. We'll go a little bit fast. Emergency is something which is, very clearly defined in Clinical Establishment Act in Section 2D. It is also defined in Section 2O, which says that you have to provide medical treatment, and you have to see that while the patient is being shifted, there is no material deterioration. There is a contract between a patient and a doctor, and the doctor-patient contract is not established in case of emergency, meaning whereby in case of emergency, you need not take any consent, you need not do any documentation. Anything with respect to that contract you can do away, because emergency needs to be treated as an emergency. No consent is required to treat and render first aid to any patient in an emergency, and 24-hour service. So now people who have, so if you see, go outside, see if your hospital mentions 24-hour service available. If that is the case, then you are legally bound to attend all cases, and if you fail, it is inferred as medical negligence. So hospital jab hai 24-hour service ची पाटी लावायची का नाही, हा एक महत्त्वाचा प्रश्न आहे. But if you have put, you have to be 24 hours available. This we can skip. We all know that the Epidemic Disease Act has been invoked, which is the old act, which was used in India when bubonic plague was outbreak in Bombay Presidency. Now, what this act tells us, it puts some responsibility on the state government for inspection of persons traveling by railway or otherwise, and an inspecting officer may mandate segregation in hospitals. So it is up to the inspecting officer to decide whom to segregate. So he says 10 people, these 15 people, they need to be segregated. What does the central government do? They are responsible for inspection of all aircrafts and airport authorities, so on and so forth. And even they can have regulations for detention of a vessel or a person, if they feel that the spread of epidemic will be there. There are definite penalties if you do not follow the act. And next I'm going to tell you what you are supposed to do in the act. If you do not follow the act, then you can be punished under Section 188 of the Indian Penal Code, which is 6 months fine and 1,000 rupees. And all those who are working for state or central government are protected because they are doing in good faith for the benefit of everybody. These are the other sections which can be applied. Negligent act likely to spread infection, malignant eye likely to spread infection. Disobedience to quarantine rule is 6 months, section 271. So please follow the quarantine rule, and don't let the police harass you for this. Now, what are we supposed to do? What is it that if you do not follow, then there will be a problem? It is mandatory for all hospitals to notify patients where you suspect that there will be COVID. So all patients with breathlessness, all patients with fever, all patients with weakness, you have to, and obviously cough, you have to notify. Now, a lot of discussion went on for the consent of COVID. COVID's patient alagi that, but no, that is not a consent form. It is a self-declaration form, and it very much forms a part of these guidelines that you have to take the declaration form. It is not a consent form. It is a declaration form that the patient did not have a travel history to COVID-19 or exposure to COVID-19 patient, and that in case the patient has, then the patient will help you and tell you, and you are supposed to take care of the patient. Now, what is section 144? Everyone talks about section 144. That means not more than 5 people can get together in any particular area. 5 पेक्षा जास्त लोक एका एरियामध्ये नाही येऊ शकत. That is section 144. It is to be implemented by a notification from district magistrate. They can even block our internet connection. And if you do not follow this, it follows the punishment of unlawful assembly. Duration of section 144 can be 2 months. It can be extended every 2 months, and maximum it can go on to 6 months. What is a lockdown? How a lockdown is different from section 144? Section 144 is not more than 5 people getting together in a particular area. A lockdown is an emergency protocol implemented by authorities which prevents people from going out of a particular area. So there can be lockdown in Kothur, there can be lockdown in a part of Nagpur, there can be lockdown in Dharavi, lockdown in, so nobody can come out of that place. Whereas 144 is something different. So both of them are working just now for us. So please follow both. Now a question was, so many guidelines are coming. Which are the guidelines we should follow for COVID? See, I told you, what we follow is first Government of India, then FOXI, then national societies, then international societies, then Cochrane, and then multiple studies. So here ICMR is going to give us guidelines through the government. So ICMR guidelines we have to follow. And then we have FOXI GCPR guidelines, and we have IAG guidelines, so on and so forth. Now, this is something which is latest. ICMR has now advised asymptomatic pregnant women likely to deliver in 5 days to get tested for COVID-19. So all asymptomatic pregnant females, that means all pregnant females who would deliver in next 5 days. So that means who are more than 38 weeks, where you anticipate delivery, get a COVID-19 testing done. That is the latest ICMR guideline. The Indian Medical Association has given this to put in all our nursing home and OPDs. So you are supposed to take a print of this and put all in our, so this is general information about COVID-19, and you can also put the phone numbers where they can contact in case of emergency. Another question was, suppose a COVID-19 patient dies, is post-mortem necessary? So standard guidelines for medical legal autopsy in COVID-19 is published by ICMR, which says that non-MLC cases does not require a post-mortem. Only if MLC cases the police officer wants, there can be a post-mortem. Otherwise, requirement of post-mortem is not there. Recently, IMA did some activism, and everybody said that the Epidemic Diseases Act got amended, wherein it, for the benefit of the people working for COVID and people beating up doctors, would be prevented. The President of India also gave his assent. Please remember, it is only till the epidemic continues, and it is only for healthcare workers treating COVID-19 patients. So tomorrow, if Dr. Vaidehi, or suppose I am treating an obstetric patient which is unrelated to COVID, and somebody comes and beats me up, these amendments are not going to help me. It is only for healthcare workers treating COVID patients. आपल्याला छोटस त्यांनी एक आईस्क्रीमचा गोळा दिला हे सांगून की अख्खी कंपनी तुमच्या नावाने करतो, काय त्याचा नंतर फायदा होणार नाही. So okay, these are the changes made. Cognizable non-bailable offense, 3 months to 5 years, 6 months for grievous hurt, and twice the amount of compensation. But all this is only, again I am repeating, till the Epidemic Act continues, A, and B, only for the healthcare workers who are treating COVID-19 patients. The informed consent about COVID-19, I already said there is no statutory need. It is declaration more than a consent. Your liability of treating is not absolved. It is not an exhaustive consent. Continue to take all your consents and use this declaration. A point about telemedicine. Yes, telemedicine is now allowed. Who can do it? Any registered medical practitioner can do it under the IMC Act. After the epidemic is over, the Board of Governors are going to start a course and everybody will have to pass the course to practice telemedicine. What can be done through telemedicine? Health education, counseling, treatment. Please remember, if one thing you want to remember about telemedicine is there are categories of drugs given. Category O, Category A and Category B. Category O drugs are only for people for first consultation. Category A drugs can be given only if you do a video consultation. And Category B drugs can only be given for follow-up cases. So be very sure about these drugs, and prescription is also given how you should give it. Your legal liability is not absolved. You can charge the patient through telecommunication. Please do not do telecommunication for international patients. It is not allowed. In emergency situation, it is better to say that the patient should visit the nearest healthcare facility. Another point is, can doctors be called for government duty? Can government utilize a private hospital or clinic? Can doctors be compelled to keep their private clinics and hospitals open? Yes, the CEE regulations say that in case of emergency, a physician has to treat all patients and cannot refuse any patient arbitrarily. If an epidemic occurs, the physician should not abandon his duty for fear of contracting the disease. So we are supposed to run our hospitals, we are supposed to run our OPDs and not run away. Maharashtra COVID regulations very clearly mention that designating any government or private building as a quarantine facility. So tomorrow, some government official can come and say, Manish, your hospital we are converting into a quarantine facility. Patient ko discharge karo, sab khali karke de do. Very much they can do it. And second point is, the municipal commissioner may requisite the need for any services of any person. So they can post me or you or Amog, anybody in the COVID ward for duty. So they can very much do it. Also, the Disaster Management Act very clearly says that any resources of the person can be utilized. And they also say that there should be compensation paid. So you get money, but they can definitely call you. I know some people will say this goes against the fundamental rights. Fundamental rights are not suspended. But at this point in time, we'll have to listen to the authorities. We don't have the time, energy, effort to put a writ petition in High Court or Supreme Court and fight for this. So please note, the government, state or center can have any person or place for the use for quarantine or working as a doctor. Indian Medical Association has agreed to telemedicine guidelines. Foxy COVID guidelines, ICMR guidelines need to be followed. I hope AMOX will have our guidelines, or they can endorse Foxy guidelines. We have MCI Act which we have to follow. The last part is few questions about female sterilization, which I thought were creating some problem. So if there's one thing, so in quotes we say Gita pe haath rakh ke bolo ki sach bologe ki nahi bologe, Gita and all those things. So if there's one Gita for male and female sterilization, it is this. It is Standards of Female and Male Sterilization Services by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, first published in 2001 and now published in 2006. Everything and anything you require about tubectomy is given in this. So question was, who can perform a tubectomy? Minilab services, a trained MBBS doctor can perform. Laparoscopic sterilization, DGO, MD, MS, anybody can perform. Now from where to get this training? Now I will just put this is a complicated slide. This is for training of medical officers, in-service medical officers. All of us have done our DGO or MD from medical colleges. All medical colleges have a department of family planning. Please get your certificate from that department they give you. I have taken my certificate of MTPs and my certificate of laparoscopic sterilization from Department of Family Welfare, BJ Medical College, Sassoon General Hospital. They give it. They will give you. So nothing is needed. Just go to your alma mater and they'll give you. All this training, everything is for in-service medical officers. And for those people who have not been trained for laparoscopy during their residency, they can avail this. So number of cases to be performed, 10 under super. All this the family welfare team knows. So all this they write on your certificate and give you, not a problem. Now that is training or competency issues for the individual. What about the hospital? Now the hospital either can be accredited for tubectomy or not. So you can apply for accreditation or you may not apply. So suppose there is a hospital where accreditation for tubectomy is not applied for. Can a person who is competent do tubectomy there? Yes. Then why apply for accreditation? Apply for accreditation because the family planning insurance scheme for the benefit of patient and doctor will only apply if there is a problem in an accredited hospital. Am I very clear? So competency wise, we take certificate from our medical college, or if you have not been trained, then there are training centers, and it is all the training centers names are given in the manual. No problem. If your hospital is not accredited, no problem. You can do a tubectomy. But if there is a complication problem, family planning insurance scheme does not work. If it is accredited, family planning insurance scheme works. So see, death at a hospital, death following sterilization, expenses of treatment of medical complications, even failure of sterilization. So to do an MTP and repeat surgery, that patient gets 30,000 rupees. Doctor's facilities covered for litigation up to 2 lakh. So it is worthwhile getting that accreditation for availing this family planning insurance scheme. Place accreditation, as I already told you, for insurance and medical legal case, person for training and qualifications. Go to your medical college, get your certificate. Can you do TL with second LSCS? Yes, why not? If you take a consent, you can do a TL with second LSCS. You can do a TL with first LSCS also. But the problem is that in the guidelines, they say you have to have one baby more than 1 year. Now, if that patient has a previous one living baby from another marriage, and this is the second baby she is having, doing an LSCS now, you can, because she has one baby who's more than 1 year. Consent is given in the annexure, the failure rate is given in the consent, no problem. It is not necessary, I am putting it very clearly, it is not necessary to remove a part of the tube and send for histopath examination. Okay, because why do tubectomies fail? They fail because there's recanalization. So even after you send the tube for HP, the report comes as good, but there can still be recanalization. Government insurance for complications and failure, as I told you, is already there. So friends, I think we talked about managing police, arrest bail, anticipatory bail, managing a mob, managing media, when to fight, when to settle, how to fight a litigation, medical legal issues in COVID-19 area, which I thought are important, and some issues regarding tubectomy. Friends, you have any problem, we'll definitely take all the questions. Do not get hampered, do not get worried about medical legal issues. All of us are there, all your society, your president are there, IMA is there, Foxy Ethics Medical Legal Committee is there, and what respect or what level I have at my command, I'll tell you, our president Dr. Alpesh Gandhi is there, our local societies are working very hard, POJS is working very hard, and all of us are together. If there's any medical legal problem, on every slide I have my number. Trust me, my phone number is on 24 hours a day. Even when I take a bath, I take my phone inside, so not a problem. I will answer to your queries and we'll work out together. If together we stand, together we shall, and whatever medical legal problems, even if 4 are there like this in this picture, we can stand on. Thank you very much. You have been very patient to hear me out. Thank you so much.